Mr. Vice-Chancellor, on the recommendation of the Senate of the University of Guelph, I am honored to present to you the candidate, Peter Senge, for the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Dr. Peter Senge is renowned as a business management thought leader, widely recognized for his transformative insights concerning leadership, organizational behavior, and corporate responsibility. He was named Strategist of the Century in 1999 by the Journal of Business Strategy as one of 24 people who have had the greatest impact on the way we conduct business today. The Financial Times named him one of the world's top management gurus in 2000, and Business Week named him one of the top 10 management gurus in 2001. In 2009, the magazine Fast Company placed him among the 100 most creative people in business. Dr. Peter Senge graduated in engineering from Stanford and then went on to undertake a master's on social systems modeling at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, before completing his PhD in management. He is a senior lecturer at the MIT Sloan School of Management and the founding chair of the Society for Organizational Learning. Dr. Senge's areas of special interest focus on the decentralized role of leadership in organizations that enhances the ability of employees to work toward common goals and managerial and institutional changes needed to build more sustainable enterprises that foster social and natural as well as economic well-being. His work articulates a cornerstone position of human values in the workplace, namely that vision, purpose, reflectiveness, and systems thinking are essential if organizations are to realize their potential and create sustainable value. He has written many influential books and articles published in both academic journals and practitioner literature. His widely acclaimed book, The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization, 1990, and the accompanying The Fifth Discipline Field Book and The Dance of Change have had a resounding impact on management theory practice, with more than 1 million copies sold. In 1997, Harvard Business Review called The Fifth Discipline one of the seminal management books of the past 75 years. Most recently, Dr. Senge's work has focused on sustainability and the goal of moving businesses from a philosophy of causing less harm to finding ways of doing more good in the world. His latest book, The Necessary Revolution, How Individuals and Organizations Are Working Together to Create a Sustainable World, was published in 2008. In recognition of his substantial contributions to education and management studies, I ask you, Mr. Vice-Chancellor, to confer upon Peter Senge the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Peter, I wonder whether, in listening to the incredible things that you have done, unbelievable things, did you for a minute think back to when you sat here as an undergraduate student and was getting your first degree, and imagine that you would be such an incredible, forceful, influential person in society? Because I hope that the folks that are sitting there take real inspiration from the things that you have managed to do. I have to say, actually, I'm quite scared because I suspect you've spent most of your time assessing the organization as you've been walking down the and thinking what we do and don't do. But your accomplishments are truly, truly incredible. And it is with great pleasure that I am going to associate your name with the University of Guelph. By virtue of the authority vested in me and in the Senate of the University of Guelph, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Congratulations and thank you. Dr. Peter Senge will now give the Convocation address.
So first off, it's a great question you asked. And all I can remember is I went to school at Stanford, so I'm on the West Coast, and I was busy planning to travel to Europe, and all I could think of was how quickly I would get in the car and get on the road as I was sitting there at my graduation. So first off, it's obviously an honor and a time for all of us. You know, there are these moments, you know, life presents us with moments. Sometimes they're ones that are difficult. Sometimes they're ones that are just almost, as this is, I'm sure for most of you, purely celebratory. But the moments are moments, and the moments are ones that we all should just say, this is one of those moments when I get to pause. Probably, I don't know how anybody could measure this. We had a great conversation this morning about what you can measure and what you can't measure, but probably, without knowing what the measures are, we're all a little busier than we were a decade ago. Every one of us can think where we were and what we were doing that long ago. So as the pace of things accelerates, which it's been doing in a lot of ways, the moments become even more precious. This is one of those. I'm going to resist that kind of being brought back, as Alistair was, to kind of my moment like yours when I was getting my first degree. Because actually what I would rather do is just pause in this moment and just pause for a moment for consideration of, well, where are we? Where are we? English is a wonderfully ambiguous language, right? We can mean so many things. The we sitting in this room, the group of you as graduates, many of you are good friends with others who you're sitting with, so there's that kind of we. There's obviously the we of your families who are here. There's the we of Canada, there's the we of North America, there's the we in the largest sense of all of us trying to figure out how on earth we will live together, which for me is one of the reasons for pausing. There's a funny thing about the kind of question that Alistair asked, this contribution question. Because I think in some sense, when you have the good fortune to contribute, it's the last thing you're thinking about, nor should you. It's not like you've got a great plan, I'm going to change the world by X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to do it in this way. I think people who have that kind of plan are often in some trouble, because it's very focused on them and what they're going to do. And this transcends traditions around the world, but all recognize the traps when we get overly absorbed in ourselves. Years ago, an organization that I've learned a great deal from is an organization of all former gang members in the Boston area. Have done amazing work transforming the conditions in the communities they live in. Work with the police and all the social services today in totally different ways than was happening 25 years ago. Amongst those young people who are probably in age ranging from 17 or 18 up to 25, we were sitting in a circle and I looked around and said, these are an amazing group of leaders. Because I'm thinking about the impact they have had in their community and the simple fact that they had to absolutely change the course of their life direction in order to do that. I'm sure half of those people sitting in that circle that morning would have been dead, given the course their life was on before they kind of shifted and really decided that they wanted to make a difference to their community. So I said, this is a great time to sit and reflect about leadership, to ask each of them, so what does it mean to you to be a leader? And without exception, every one of them struggled with that question. And at first that surprised me, but then as I listened to it, I realized, well, of course. And then finally one of them said it very directly. He said, well, I was never thinking about being a leader. I was just trying to make my community better. In that simple statement, there's some real keys. Really not thinking about himself or herself, but how do I make my community better? So simple. And obviously, again, one of those beautifully ambiguous phrases, my community. They were thinking very definitely about Chelsea, Massachusetts, where they had all grown up and lived and gone through the adventures and storms and uncertainties of their lives and come around to create this organization. But then again, my community can be expanded as well. So that simple statement, I would never thought about being a leader. I just thought about how to make my community better, is something that I think is a very easy one for us to anchor on. Because you don't make contributions except as judged in hindsight. And the irony there is, if you're really making any kind of a contribution in the world, where are you primarily focused? Not on the past, but on the present and the future. So it's almost an irrelevant question. So to me, the simplest question to sit with in the moment here is, where are we? What matters to me? How can I make my community a little better? Fortune is a funny thing. None of us have much control over it, and yet it plays such an influence. I remember years ago watching an interview, TV journalist was interviewing different, very, very successful CEOs, and he was interviewing Mr. Honda, the founder of Honda. Of course, a family enterprise, and he was probably the second in this sequence because it's been around for a long time, well before they made cars. They made motors and tractors and all kinds of things. Anyhow, I'll never forget, he asked this venerable, probably 80-year-old Japanese man, to what do you attribute your great accomplishments? And he just smiled and laughed, and he said, good fortune. And I think that's really true. When I'm really focused on how I can make a difference to my community, good fortune is really important, and it will tend to come. Again, the irony, good fortune tends to come to those who most are focused elsewhere. They're not focused on getting their fortune. Of course, that too means many things. They're not focused on themselves. They're focused on what needs to be done. And then amazing and serendipitous, synchronous things just sort of start to happen. Perhaps some of you know exactly what I'm talking about already, because we have these moments when we kind of see things a little more clearly. And we realize all the circumstances that have somehow aligned and all the forces for which we've had no direct hand in have come to support something we're doing. And in those moments we go, as Mr. Honda said, good fortune. But it's not a random phenomenon. It's directly influenced by the state of our consciousness as we do what we do. Now that's a big word, can mean a lot of different things, but it's become a very simple and meaningful one in all of the work that I've been part and privileged to be part of doing. That you can tell where people are coming from. It's that simple. What's the orientation? What's the spirit? What's the energy? What's the state of consciousness? That inner state that we bring is far more influential than all the skills and all the knowledge and all the connections and all the resources. All of those are important, but they're somehow forged into something that makes a difference based on that inner state. I've often thought that we get a lot of things kind of off base about education. We do think it's about connections, really. We don't say it, but we often do. You know, people pick universities because of their history and all the other kind of people who've been there. So those connections, and obviously we think of it as resources. And then as educators, we always think of it as skills. Like Maureen said, this capacity to ask tough questions, to not settle for overly easy answers. All those things are really important, and they are certainly in order of priority, part of what makes education education. But the subtlest and the most important is that cultivation of an inner state. It always strikes me that human beings are born with this incredible curiosity. That's really obvious. You're around kids, and you see it loud and clear. The curiosity, this drive to learn, might be a kind of a defining feature of us as a species. You know, we're not particularly tall, we're not particularly fast, we're not particularly strong. If you look at species, you know, what gives us something that has allowed us to make the progress we've made biologically? Well, it has a lot to do, obviously, with our ability to learn. And one other thing, our ability to work together. We are a social animal. And I don't say that in any sense of criticism, because it's an odd word to use. But if you kind of put us in a biological context, we are social mammals. In evolutionary theory, this is considered a key feature of the development of this species, the opposable thumb. There's been whole books written about the opposable thumb, and the kind of standard explanation for it is it allowed us to grasp. It made us a species that was predisposed to be a tool maker, a tool user. We became manipulators. I mean, the dolphins have larger brains, but they obviously evolved in a very different context. They're not manipulators. We are. But there's something else about this. In addition to allowing us to grasp, it allows us to caress. Our loving relationships define us. And so that inner state is a state of relatedness. The idea of compassion, which was also mentioned, is a byproduct of having a sense of connection. And that sense of connection is innate in us. One simple way to define education, I would say I would prefer it over all others, is developing the capacity to do what you're naturally capable of doing. To embody and enact nature's deep imprint. If we can stay true to that spirit of education, a lot of the big problems in the world will become solvable in ways they're not otherwise. Because they're not going to get solved by skills and talent and connections and resources. All those are important. They will get solved by an inner orientation that is firmly grounded in our capacity to be connected to one another and to life more generally. So, we don't have bagpipes in Massachusetts much, so it was a wonderful way to kind of appreciate the importance of the setting and to take the moment and just pause and say, so what does this education really mean to me? And if in any way what I'm saying makes some sense to you as kind of cultivating a particular inner state, a particular quality of awareness, of presence, to be connected, a lot of other things will fall into place. Thank you.